Thank you very much for the introduction, and thank you everyone for being in this very interesting webinar where we'll be touching, I think, a very critical topic with regards to international expansion, and in this case, how to conquer Asia. Just to introduce you to myself and to have a little bit of my background and the company that I represent. I am the CEO of a company called Auxadi. The company was incorporated by my father back in the days in year 1979. And when I received the invitation from Stefano, who is someone that they've been working with for many years, I was delighted to receive the invitation because I consider also myself an entrepreneur. As you will see in the following slide, today we are quite a significantly large corporation, although still a lot of room to grow. These are our offices in Spain. The company, as I was saying, was incorporated in 79, is still 100% family managed. Today, we count with 300 employees of 25 different nationalities, and we are rendering services to something around 1,750 clients, with operating subsidiaries in 22 countries and covering already 50 jurisdictions, with a volume of revenue of nearly $30 million, 30 million euros these days. If you go please to the following slide, this is a little bit of our presence. Mainly what we cover is Spain and Europe together with Americas, connecting it with the rest of the world. And of course, we partner with Monx for anything related to Asia. And what we do is accounting services, tax compliance services, payroll management services, anything that you can expect from a financial department when you expand abroad. If you go please to the following slide. We have a quite unique value proposal based on international coverage, the consistency in execution thanks to the technology and multi-country platform that we have built on our own, and the single point of contact, which is the key account managers that are coordinating the whole service, very similar to the value proposal of Monx these days. And finally, you go to the following one and click. Please to the following one. You would see, well, there's some numbers with regards to how Asia is critical in the expansion of a business nowadays. What we have done as Spanish companies is to focus on those jurisdictions where typically a Spanish firm could be a position itself, which is mainly the Americas, but also we are helping through Monx Asian subsidiaries of our clients. That being said, I would pass the word to Stefano, who is the most important person in Monx as CEO of the company, and very happy to make these introduction words. Thank you very much, and I hope you enjoy it.
Thank you, Victor. Thank you so much. Actually, I'm not the most important person at Monx. The team is the most important person at Monx. And it's good, and I'm very happy to see you here. This is also a story of entrepreneurship. We grew up together as companies, and we are supporting many companies to come to Asia. This is very important because this is at the core of our value proposition, which is bringing companies to Asia, bringing companies to conquer seriously the market. Especially in those times and in these times where the game is becoming hard, extremely hard. Europe, UK, you see what is happening. UK was a big trade for Europe. The US as well is always shaky. Asia has been and will be for the next year the real commodity, the real place to be. And when you talk about Asia, you talk about three basically spots. One is China, Greater China. The other one is Hong Kong, that is functional to China. And then there is Singapore and Southeast Asia. And today we'll go through it. We have 50 minutes. I will make it short and sweet and entertaining, and hopefully you will like it. So if I look good, I will start the presentation. So this is the table of contents, okay, guys? Setup, tax, personal, double taxation agreement, which is very important to choose where you want to set the new office, and then some economic agreements, okay? Preamble, this is amazing. By 2050, 50% of the GDP, again, by 2050, 50% of GDP in the world, by 2040, even 50% of the GDP of the world will be produced in Asia. So I think this answered already your question on why we are stressing the fact that any company, from small, medium enterprise to large companies, need to have a presence in Asia. 50% of the global GDP will be produced in Asia by 2040. All right, 2040 is not that far away from now. Top 20 economies, you see China just topped the United States, and then India, Indonesia in the top 4. So again, Hong Kong, China, and Singapore, they all come from a colonial history. I like to call it the three dragons, but we need to understand what is the best. There is no single question, there is no single answer to this question. No single answer. The answer lies on what you need to do with Hong Kong, what you need to do with China, and what you need to do in Singapore. So for example, your company is a small, medium enterprise, which is a pymes, as they say in Spanish, and they produce, I don't know, coffee machines, or they produce high quality furniture. And your first customers are, for example, in Thailand, maybe makes sense to go to Singapore and set up your office. Or you are exposed to the Chinese market. You have Chinese like buyers. Probably you should be directly in China if you want to sell in renminbi. Or you have international customers, including China or including Singapore, and you want to cover it all, and you go to Hong Kong. And we will see slowly why. All right? So Singapore is on a high because Hong Kong, of course, you heard about the protests, you heard about the COVID situation that is slowly getting better. But Singapore right now is on fire, good and bad. Good because people are flocking to Singapore. Good for the city. Bad because it's becoming extremely expensive. Extremely expensive. Makes it hard, all right, for people to get there and get a visa. We were reflecting with Judith, which is our expert on the Singaporean and Southeast Asian market, on why it's becoming so expensive, all right? And there is a why. The why lays on the fact that visas are becoming particularly complicated. Complicated means that, in Singapore, besides the skill set that you need to have and you need to show for certain kind of visa, you need to show that you're earning money. So companies, they need to pay a lot of money to grant a visa, and to have money to pay visa. To have money, people actually can afford more. So if people can afford more, inflation goes high. So right now, it's really complicated even to find an apartment in Singapore because it's becoming expensive. Of course, it's becoming a very large headquarter for many corporations that want to enter Asia. But still, Hong Kong might make sense for many others. Let's see, Singapore, how to set up company, very straightforward, $1 straightforward process, but careful, because Singaporean authorities are not as easygoing as, for example, in Hong Kong, that is a little bit more, I would say, easy. For example, you need a local director in Singapore. Basically, you have a corporate local director that, of course, if you cannot provide, you need to pay, right? And that makes things a little bit more complicated and expensive, but still it's within the range and the scope of the fact that Singapore is quite easy to set up a company. Beautiful thing, profit tax 17%. There are some tax exemption. I won't go further on this because we can discuss it later on the Q&A. There is no tax on dividend payout, no tax on dividend received. Singapore is dividend and capital gain free. So, for example, if Singapore is the mother company of a company in the Philippines, or in the UK, for example, they can pay out dividends without retainer, without withholding taxes. Or if Singapore is, for example, that the subsidiary of another company, we can receive dividends from another company without taxes, and which is great. GST is only a two condition. If you have 1 million Singapore dollars, right, which is something that it's pretty interesting. Although in other jurisdiction it will be GST or VAT free. When I say GST, I say VAT, right? Personnel, if you are looking to set up for an office in Singapore, you need to be mindful that, as I said, salaries are not the lowest, quite the contrary, well, quite the highest in the planet, although you can find very skillful individuals. Also because you need to be skilled to gain your presence in Singapore. So as you can see, Singaporeans are very romantic. To get a visa, you need to pay quite a bit of money and you need to be highly skilled. But this is within the policy of Singapore, which is a very successful city and country itself, and is really leading the pack in the Asian economy. Salary tax, not too expensive, not too bad. It's 20%, and accommodation and fringe benefits are taxable. And that's it. Immigration, as I was saying, you have many employing passes, different visa, entrepreneur pass. But again, you need to go through rules of the immigration. They are becoming stricter and stricter because there is a lot of people that want to be there, right? Don't go bother you on this. To run a company in Singapore, it's not too complicated. You need to have basically an annual taxation. The audit report is not needed unless your turnover is substantial, differently from Hong Kong that you will need it every year. Taxation rate, I would say 17% profit tax rate. As I was saying, director to set up the company, you need the director that is local and which is mandatory. Okay, a company secretarial, a tax agent, and a registered address. It must be an address, a physical address, cannot be a PO box. Right? Bank account opening, we will discuss later with our friend Sam. Again, it's not too complicated as it used to be, especially with digital banking solutions, but it's not guaranteed, right? The bank needs to run an assessment, KYC, and we need to make sure that we're not either trading weapons or doing some other sort of illegal activities, which is not good in any jurisdiction, not just Hong Kong. Double taxation agreement. I love this slide. The more double taxation agreement I see in place for countries, the happier I am. And you know why? Because it makes our work as tax advisor much easier. Why that? Because when you sign a double taxation agreement, means that the two countries are making peace, right? So if there is an Austrian company deciding to invest in Singapore and there is a double taxation agreement in place, means that there are bilateral agreement on the fact that if you get taxed in Singapore, you probably don't get taxed in Austria, all right? Terms and conditions apply, meaning that you need to have management in Singapore, so you cannot just like remote control the company in Singapore. But if you have a company in Singapore that is fully operative and there is a double taxation in place, you are not taxed in both countries, right? We will get to the double taxation agreement a little bit later. Don't go too far on. I don't want to go too crazy on the double taxation on the free trade agreements. Have you heard of ASEAN? This is the most important thing. Basically, just to give you a snap, there are no tariffs. There is no duties. There's no basically custom in the countries of ASEAN. So when we talk about ASEAN countries, we are talking about Philippines, we're talking about Laos, we're talking about Vietnam, we're talking about Myanmar, we're talking about Malaysia, we're talking about Thailand. So if you are planning to do business in these places around Singapore, which are called the ASEAN market, ASEAN markets, boom, Singapore is the place you want to be, because you can have advantages by doing this, all right? So the little complication that you might have from a company formation, the immigration, it might be set off by the elimination of tariffs. If from Singapore you are planning, bloom, 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 to go through this country. So Thailand, Indonesia, Brunei, Malaysia, and Philippines. Is everything okay? Am I going too fast? Am I going too slow? Hopefully everything is fine. We go to China now. China, no need presentations. If makes sense to go to China, for me, yes. As I used to say in this very same seminar 10 years ago, or maybe more, China is the turkey on the table, is the big dish. So even if you are in Singapore, in Hong Kong, you are looking with the side of your eyes to China, all right? Is right now the first or the second, I would say, largest economy, but it's topping up with the US. They have the largest city in the world. Consumption is skyrocketing, and most importantly, what we have is a younger population that is becoming affluent. Now, don't get fooled about the COVID. Yes, there are troubles. Yes, they are handling. I don't want to take political parties on this, but I just want to make a little reflection. There have been lockdowns, there have been complications in general, traveling, you need to still quarantine to go to China. But I would like to draw your attention on one fact. If lockdowns wouldn't be put in place and say 50% of the population, including farms, would have go to COVID, think the fact that Chinese factories would need to stop productions. Can you imagine what happened to inflation? I will leave you with this question mark. I'm not saying that Chinese are being heroes and they are saving the world, but they are restricting their freedom, because if a real massive super pandemics would spread, factories would close. And China is the producer to basically 70 to 80% of what is the world export. That means that people cannot buy products anymore. So we'll need to buy just locally, bringing the price to extreme level. So it will cause tension on a world. So anyway, China is to say that is and will always be the place where companies will need to have the most attention. Just simple for a matter of numbers. It's the biggest market in the planet and the most eager for foreign products, to be frank. Right? Now, how to set up a company in China used to be very, very complicated. You remember, some of you remember the WOFI, only on a foreign enterprise, that you need to sign with a black pen, otherwise it would be rejected. Yes, it's not as easy as Hong Kong and Singapore, but it's now possible to do quite a bit of things. One thing that I love is that we can also do it remotely to a certain extent through the means of a local director that will temporarily hold the position as legal rep, do everything, waiting for the company to come to China and do the rest of it. Okay? If you set up companies in China, you might find very good local talent, but careful, because if they need to speak very good English, and specifically for certain areas between taxes and salary, the salaries in China are becoming progressively expensive. This is a fact. It's no more the case of cheap China. Maybe for labor workers, yes, but not even that much, because China is more evolved than many other jurisdictions. So you go to China for quality, not for just for the cheap prices. Okay, you get good right now. They're very educated. I remember when I first went to China, it was not the case. The cost of an accountant, for example, it probably tripled in the last 15 years. Did the quality of the human resource increase and improve? Definitely yes. So you pay more, but you get more. Tax rate, not the cheapest. It's up to 45% if you have big salaries. If you have like more than, I would say, 120,000 US dollars, you will pay up to 45% income tax. Okay. Somebody is not muted, please. Whoever is not muted, mute it. Immigration, F, Z, L, X, D, whatever. In China, it's a little bit of a pain. You need to pass a little bit of it, like medical visits and stuff like this, but visa is definitely achievable in a decent amount of time. The selection and the bar to the entry, it's definitely not as complicated as Singapore. So compliance, you will need to do audit. It's not as simple again as Singapore and Hong Kong, but you have a monthly and quarterly balance sheet and P&L that you need to submit to the local authority. For us, it's easy because we've been doing it for many years. It might be a little bit overwhelming at the beginning because you need to have capital contribution, and you cannot use the capital contribution money unless you have a good reason to spend them. So there is a little bit of foreign control of foreign currency converting in local currency, but again, it's much better than many years ago. I want to make the long story short on China. Why you want to set up a business in China when you have Hong Kong and Singapore as an alternative? There are two exquisite main reasons. One, you want to sell in renminbi. The only place where you can sell in renminbi, in Chinese yuan, is China. So if you have local customers in China, you must sell from a WFOE, because otherwise it will be complicated to sell it from your country, right? The second must set up a company in China is to hire local workforce. So if you need to hire people in China, you need to have a WFOE. You need to have a company there. If you don't need to hire people and you don't need to sell in Chinese yuan, you don't have local market, don't waste your time and money, all right? Because China might be pricey and a little bit more complicated than the other jurisdictions. Beautiful. Many double taxation agreements have been signed with China. This is a clear indication that many other countries, they want to do business with China, all right? So there are many countries that made peace with China in terms of taxation. And here comes Hong Kong, which is, I would say, my home. I'm slightly biased, I must say. But I'm not biased because of lack of objectivity. I'm biased because still Hong Kong is the easiest place to do business, whatever people would say. I live there. I'm proud to be having Monx headquarters in Hong Kong, despite the fact that I very much love Singapore and I travel to China. But I can tell you one thing. The real door to China is still Hong Kong. To set up a WFOE in China, most people will set up a Hong Kong holding first, to take advantage of a double taxation agreement. It's called CEPA and makes everything much easier. Hong Kong is basically the capital city, or I would say an integral part of the Greater Bay Area. What is the Greater Bay Area? Take Silicon Valley times 5, prospectively. The Greater Bay Area is basically where all the iPhones are made. Guangzhou, Shenzhen, Zhuhai. And then have you heard about Macau? Yes, you probably have. So this is the biggest economic hub in the planet. And Hong Kong is right at the center stage of it, okay? Again, IPO, where is the biggest IPO market where people go public? It's not Singapore yet. It's still Hong Kong, despite all the troubles. You may advocate there is China on Hong Kong, and you want to speculate on the political issues and stuff. I will let the speculator to speculate. I will let the business people do business in Hong Kong. Hong Kong, setting up company takes 1 day, $1 and there is no requirements of any sort except for specific sectors, right? Opening a bank account, you will see later, takes again 2 days, 3 days, especially with some digital banks, especially with Currenxie that we work with partners, and of course, beside all the KYC and everything that we need to do. Taxation, you want to talk about a clean country, not an offshore BVI, Cayman, blah, 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 this other jurisdiction, a clean place where you achieve the best taxation, 8.25% for the first 2 million Hong Kong dollars profit, not too small, huh? And 16.5% thereon. There is no VAT, there is no GST, there is no whatever. There is nothing of it. There is only profit tax and tiny taxation. Deductibility of cost, whatever contributes to achieve the company goal in terms of profit, it's deductible. Conditions might apply, but the deductibility openness of cost in Hong Kong is extremely high. Personnel, you would be surprised, but at same level of competence right now, China is almost as expensive as Hong Kong. Don't ask me why, but I know why. The point is that in China, it's a bit harder to find highly skilled individuals that speak English. So if you are a foreign company, you need English as a precondition. In Hong Kong, pretty much everybody speaks English, right? So, and culturally, they are also closer to foreigners, I mean, to YLOs, or the white people, as they call it. So it would be much easier to find personnel. Personal income tax, you will be paying from 2% to a max of 15% if your income is beyond 2 million. So you can see that it's quite tiny. The house allowance are kept at 10%. This is beautiful. So listen to this. If your package is 5,000 euro salary and 5,000 euro housing, you get taxed only of the 5,000 euro of salary and 10% of the yearly 5,000 euro per month of your housing. So say 5,000 euro house allowance will be 60,000 euro, you only be taxed on 6,000 euro, right? While you will be taxed on the 5,000. So this is a very big contribution to have larger packages and impact less on your taxation. Immigration visa, I can say, and I can tell you in a relatively comfortable way, that our application rate for people is skyrocketing. I can see a lot of openness. Of course, immigration doesn't accept everyone, but I can tell you that there is no closing in terms of resources to foreign people to come to Hong Kong. So you can have an internship visa as an entry-level person that comes. You can have, of course, the employment visa, and then you have the dependent, the residence, and the capital investment scheme, means if you invest in Hong Kong. The most common, employment and investment. And internship for those youngsters that are coming to try a first experience. Compliance is pretty easy. Once a year, you run a profit tax, you run an audit report, and you submit a profit tax return with it. First year, you have up to 18 months to do it. After that, it's yearly. And to set up, you can do pretty much remotely if you cannot travel here. You need to have a company secretary. You need to have a shareholder. The director don't need to be from Hong Kong. He doesn't need to be from Hong Kong. He can be an Italian living in Italy, for example, or he can be like anyone, and there is no requirement. Double taxation agreement. You can see the double taxation agreement is quite vast, and that's it. Hong Kong is slowly opening up. Hong Kong had a reputation to be a blacklisted country. But basically, being blacklisted means not having signed a double taxation agreement. So you are blacklisted for a jurisdiction. So, for example, still remember, Italy and Hong Kong didn't have a double taxation agreement, and Italy was seeing Hong Kong as a blacklisted country. Once they signed a double taxation agreement, Hong Kong is no more blacklisted for Italy. All right. So a blacklisted country, it's a concept that goes in relation with the country you are dealing with. Closer economic partnership agreement. I'm running out of time, and I can see my colleagues making signs. I'll just leave you with this. If you want to enter China, best place is in Hong Kong because you have a CEPA. CEPA is the Closer Economic Partnership Agreement, which provides for Hong Kong companies and business a way to gain access to the Chinese market. Okay? There are many incentives for different sectors. There are many incentives in terms of dividend tax repatriation, meaning that you won't need to pay withholding tax at China level or paying a lesser amount. But I won't go too much into details, and I will let you ask us questions in case you have. There's a tax comparison table. This presentation will be shared, right? It's pretty hefty. They have 50 pages, so I will let you enjoy instead of watching Netflix tonight, and you will become a super expert in taxation and everything you are concerned with Singapore, Hong Kong, and China. And I think my presentation is finished here. Want to thank again all our fantastic co-speakers, which are also friends. This is the beauty of doing business with friends and partners that have been with us for a very long time. They help us, we help them, and at the goal, and I'm not just telling to be the sales guy, although some of you think I am. Really supporting companies. Entrepreneurship for us is a mission. And Monx means Monx, devotion to the business. We have seen a lot of companies bankrupt in these years. We have been personally in difficulties during COVID. And now the only thing that we can do is bring them all back and make the economy, help the economy to flourish. All right. And I'm sure that you will find the other three speakers after us extremely entertaining and insightful. So stay again with us and probably see each other in some other seminars. We're organizing something on relocating and working in cheaper places such Thailand and Malaysia, still keeping your interest in Hong Kong and Singapore, but this is something to be released later. Thank you very much, and I'll leave the word to my other co-speakers.
Thank you so much, Stefano.
You're welcome.
So we've had many people obviously inquire about setting up remotely and how do I set up a bank account? Am I going to have to fly all the way to Hong Kong? and do KYC. And so we have the pleasure of Sam Coyne, who is the CMO at Currenxie. Currenxie is a cross-border payments company providing multi-currency Visa accounts, Visa cards, bank transfers, and foreign exchange for businesses globally. So I'm going to pass on the mic to Sam, who is, as we can see, just joined. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, everyone, and Stefano. It's lovely to join you here today and speak on a topic that's very close to my heart. Myself personally, I've lived in China, I've lived in Singapore, my wife is Singaporean, and Hong Kong has been my home for the past 10 years. So the advantages and disadvantages of these different jurisdictions for entrepreneurship and for finance is something that's very close to my heart. And Hong Kong is where Currenxie is headquartered. So the reason why this topic is so relevant to us as a business is that we operate a global financial network out of Hong Kong. So Currenxie is a digital platform that is connected to banks all around the world, banks that act as our partners. And what we do is we facilitate cross-border payments and foreign exchange. Sorry, there was a bit of an interruption in the room there. Cross-border payments and foreign exchange for corporate clients. And so core to what we do is helping our corporate clients expand into new markets, expand around the world, and to eliminate the banking and payment challenges that they would otherwise incur in doing so. So we work with businesses that have originated in Asia and want to expand into Europe and North America, and vice versa. We help North American and European businesses with their banking and payment challenges in Asia. Now, Singapore and Hong Kong are world-class financial centers that offer every type of financial product and service that you could ever need. Hong Kong in particular has deep capital markets. It's a wonderful place to raise funds for your business or even to IPO. It does come with some challenges, and those challenges tend to be felt most acutely when you're just getting started. And this is something that we've learned a lot about through working with our clients, through mutually working with our friends at Monx to help their clients establish their operations here. And it's become something that we're very familiar with and very adept at overcoming and helping them. And so I'm just going to share in brief what are some of the key points in terms of the particular challenges, and then also what we're able to do to alleviate those. I will say that most of the challenges that businesses setting up here will encounter when it comes to their banking is not the availability of services, it's the time to avail of those services. So banks in Hong Kong in particular, they will do all of the KYC, AML, CTF type checks that any bank around the world would do, but they'll also look very closely at the substance of your business. And this becomes a little bit of a chicken and an egg problem when it comes to getting started. And as every successful entrepreneur knows, getting started is really the most important step, right? You want to begin. And so something that we've seen, and this has become very acute in the last 10 years, is that traditional corporate bank accounts have become quite difficult and time consuming to open, with wait times sometimes stretching from 3 to 6 months. That's a real obstacle when you've opened a business and you want to start billing and invoicing, you want to start paying suppliers, paying staff. You don't want to be waiting for that, right? Additionally, handling multiple currencies is something that is top of mind for businesses in this region. And that is really primarily because Asia is a much more fragmented market as a whole than Europe or North America is from a banking and payments perspective, because there are no common currencies in this region, there are no common payment rails or common settlement systems. So inevitably, any business that sets up in this region needs to be prepared to handle multiple currencies and also be prepared for the relatively slow and expensive cross-border transfer fees that come with dealing with those different systems. And then adding to that, you have the fact that some of the currencies in this region are restricted. They don't trade electronically on the open markets. And so that can introduce additional foreign exchange costs that you may not be used to if, for example, you have been running your business in the Eurozone, for example, right? And of course, if you're waiting for a corporate bank account, you're also going to wait for a corporate expense card, which can additionally make paying for expenses and getting up and running a little more tedious. Now, I will reiterate, these are all primarily issues that you face in the beginning. Once your business is set up and running in the region, these will all really evaporate for you. And I'll also highlight that this tends to be felt a little more acutely in Hong Kong. It's a little easier in Singapore to get up and running. In Hong Kong, still for the most part, in-person interviews are required to open a traditional corporate bank account here. There are some exceptions to that, but it's still what's considered normal. Now, what we've learned through working very closely with businesses setting up here is that these can be overcome by combining more modern digital fintech solutions with what the traditional banking industry here has to offer. If I go through each of the kind of challenges that you will face and how we're now able to overcome them, and really this change has come about mostly in the last 5 years with the introduction of services like ours, where Currenxie acts as a network sitting on top of the traditional banking system. So one of the things we can do immediately is we can open an account for you online and remotely. So as a company director, as a business owner, you can be anywhere in the world. It doesn't matter to us. We will treat you exactly the same. And we can get an account open for you within 48 hours if need be. And once you access what we call our global account, what we're able to do is give you virtual bank accounts with our partners. So for example, in Hong Kong, that might be DBS Bank or Citibank, right? And that's a virtual account in your business's name. And what it means is that you can now start getting paid locally in the local currency into that account, and you can do it immediately. That is arguably, from a payments perspective, the single most important step that your business needs to take is you need to be able to get paid in the new market. So that's a way where we're able to resolve that issue very, very quickly. But then there's a lot of other advantages that we can leverage by using a digital solution. One of those is we can eliminate the friction of the cross-border transfers, because instead of going through the traditional correspondent bank system using, say, for instance, the SWIFT network to coordinate payments, it goes directly through Currenxie's network, which is very, very rapid. So we're able to move funds between countries, between markets, between currencies very, very quickly and very, very affordably. Another thing is that Currenxie as a business is built as a foreign exchange specialist. So we are a wholesale provider of foreign exchange services, and we give that to every single one of our corporate clients, regardless of their size, regardless of their payment volumes. From day one with us, they access interbank foreign exchange rates. And for us, we trade CNH, offshore renminbi. We're very, very experienced in converting from CNH and sending money into China, for example, which is sometimes a pain point for companies getting started in this region. And then additionally, we're able to do things like create virtual Visa business cards on our platform. That can be done in seconds. So you're up and running with essentially all of the things, small and big, from a banking and payments perspective that allow you to just start, right? Which is really so key, is just getting started. Now, I will say, I don't think this is the complete picture, right? So to end, I'll just sort of share what I would do personally, were I starting a new business in this region from scratch, in terms of how I would approach my banking and payments setup. What I would do is, to start with, after I've incorporated my businesses, I would open a fintech account, a digital solution. And what I would do is I would leverage that to begin establishing the substance of my local operations. I would use it for my invoicing and billing. I would use it for my payments. I would use it for my expense management. And I would build a balance, build a float in that account. And I would establish my operation that way. And I'd take my time, and 6 to 12 months down the road, I would take my pick of corporate bank accounts, traditional corporate bank accounts in the region, and then I would approach them with my full, complete business case. And I guarantee you the account opening process will go a lot more smoothly that way, and with a lot less headache, and you won't have waited for it so much. And I would have the best of both worlds. Currenxie is not a traditional bank, and we recommend to all of our clients who have established a certain scale and profitability to open a corporate bank account and leverage that bank's deposit and credit facilities to help scale your business even further. And what I would use the digital solution for is all of my transactional needs. I'll use the digital solution for all of my payment flows across borders, all of my foreign exchange, all of my expense management. And essentially what that means is I've established a new business in Hong Kong or Singapore, or even China, and I'm now accessing global payment solutions cheaply and affordably. It wasn't a headache, it was easy, and it gave me the ability to approach a top-tier bank and get the corporate bank account of my choice, which I can then use to leverage, as I said, for credit facilities to grow my business. So in a nutshell, and simply, those are some of the challenges you might encounter, but fortunately, and in particularly the last 5 years, they have largely been overcome thanks to digital solutions.
Incredible. Thank you so much, Sam, for your insightful presentation. I think that Currenxie is really pioneering this, borderless business, which we're trying to really push at Monx as well, and obviously softening one of the bigger hurdles to moving into the APAC region, allowing people to really do business more easily, quickly, and possibly cheaper as well. I think Stefano might have a few words which he wants to add.
Sorry to interject, but I really want to remark on one thing. The biggest hurdle for many companies to set up in Asia is actually the bank account opening. And I know the founder of Currenxie since a long time, is as an half Italian. And he saw this coming. And I don't know if you remember that there was a moment that in Hong Kong, people were saying, no, I don't come to Hong Kong to open bank accounts because it's too complicated, because it's restrictive, because this, because that. And Currenxie made it possible. This is why technology, and I'm not trying to sell Currenxie as it is. I don't own any Currenxie stocks, for a matter of disclosure. I'm talking about currencies, I'm talking about fintech and digitalization of financial means. Digitalization made possible remote bank account openings with high level of KYC and onboarding. I translated for those that don't know these funky words, meaning that a traditional bank will say, no, we don't open bank accounts because we're scared. Because if something is wrong, or if you're a drug dealer, I get fined as a bank to allow you. But with, like, for example, digital KYC or algorithms or AI or big data, digital banks are really able to pinpoint a good customer from a bad customer, a legitimate from a non-legitimate. So instead of saying no to everyone to cover the back, they select the good one from the bad one. And since we deal with good people and we deal with good companies, why they cannot open? So now it's possible to open. And now the world is really becoming like an incredible place to do business and to business remotely, and opening companies in 2 hours and bank accounts, thanks to service provider like ours that we do companies remotely, and we can open bank account remotely, making sure that there is no cheater or gamblers or any other thing that would be bad for society and entrepreneurship. This is a remark that I really want to do, and I'm very grateful to entrepreneurs that have visions to break the barrier of no, we cannot do, sorry. So going beyond this concept. Then sorry for the interjection.
No, absolutely, I completely agree. We're going to move on swiftly, and our next panel is all about the incentives and tools for international companies to set up offices in the 3 regions that we've mentioned: Singapore, Hong Kong, and China. And our next speaker is Jacqueline Zhang. She's a regional director at the Singapore Economic Development Board. So EDB is a government agency under the Ministry of Trade and Industry, and they are responsible for strategies that enhance Singapore's position as a real global center for business, innovation, and talent, as we've discussed briefly at the start. I'm going to pass the mic on to Jacqueline. So if you don't mind switching on your camera, unmuting yourself, and Giacomo will share your presentation.
Wonderful. Thank you for having me today. Since you've already started with an introduction on my behalf and also on behalf of the EDB, I will dive right in to share about Singapore and also what we have to offer as an international business hub. This can hopefully give everyone that's with us today some ideas as they think about growing their businesses in Asia. Next slide, please. So here's the introduction slide I have on the EDB. I think we're well introduced. I would just need to highlight that I'm based in Europe, and in Europe, what our main job really is to work with European businesses to support you on your journey of internationalization through Singapore. So let's go to the next slide. And I know today we're gathered here to talk about Asia, but allow me to zoom in on a specific part of Asia, which is Southeast Asia. Next slide, please. Southeast Asia is a region that is home to more than 600 million people. A population size that's actually larger than the entire European Union. The region together is expected to become the fourth largest economy in 2030, and with a consumer market that is larger than that of India and close to that of coastal China. A growing middle class is driving demand for increasingly sophisticated products and services. Next slide, please. Singapore is very lucky to be strategically located within a 4-hour flight radius to the rest of Southeast Asia. We also have an extensive network of 26 free trade agreements to facilitate trade and business within the region and also between the region and the rest of the world. But these are not the only reasons why companies from all over the world have decided to set up in Singapore. Next slide, please. They're also in Singapore, so allowed us to brag a little bit. They're also in Singapore because they recognize our stable political climate, a business-friendly environment, strong IP protection, which is becoming an increasingly important topic, the availability of skilled talent, and also is just how easy it is for people from all countries and all kinds of backgrounds to live in Singapore. Next slide, please. Now, here's a quick look at the makeup of Singapore's economy, right? So besides, as you can see from the graph, that we've grown steadily, our economy really has gone through tremendous transformation from a labor-intensive economy 5 decades ago to one that is driven by knowledge and innovation-intensive activities today. What has not changed, though, is that our economy remains very open, very diverse. Today, we have a broad base of economic activities across manufacturing and tradable services sectors. Many people are surprised to learn, as you can see the statistics here, that manufacturing accounts for 22% of our GDP. The type of manufacturing activities include pharmaceuticals, electronics, chemicals, and even food manufacturing as well. Next slide, please. So how exactly do companies like yourselves use Singapore to tap into the growth opportunities in the region? Let's take a look. Next slide, please. Many companies set up their regional headquarters or even global headquarters in Singapore. So these headquarters have highly skilled teams to manage and develop best practices across different markets and managers and ensure the coherence of the company's strategies and operations in the region all across the world. Next one, please. Singapore is also a trusted innovation hub for global businesses, thanks to our innovation system, which we have built through years and years of investment in science and technology. So companies across sectors are leveraging the strong fundamentals and building their innovation presence in Singapore, oftentimes through partnerships with public research institutes, startups, local businesses, or other foreign multinationals. They're also based in Singapore. Here, our being small as a country is an advantage, actually. What we hear often is that we have everybody from all the different industries, different types of roles gathered in close proximity from one another. And this helps people to do business, to bring everybody together, to ideate, to collaborate, and things like that. Next slide, please. I had mentioned earlier manufacturing being 22% of our GDP. So here, let me tell you just a little bit more about it. We have companies carrying out high-value manufacturing activities in Singapore, including recently Hyundai's decision to manufacture electric vehicles in Singapore, and Sanofi's decision to build a new vaccines production facility. We have made it our priority to promote the adoption of Industry 4.0 type technologies across our manufacturing sectors, and we actively encourage the growth of a manufacturing ecosystem. An example is the Jurong Innovation District, which is a new hub for advanced manufacturing that we're building in the west of Singapore. Here, we're hoping to change how companies collaborate and innovate by putting together players in different parts of the manufacturing value chain in one single place. And through our research institutes, we also build things like model factories to help companies to visualize and experience the benefit of equipping factories with I 4.0 technologies. We're proud to also say that the EDB has created the Smart Industry Readiness Index, which is a suite of framework and tools free for everybody to use to help manufacturers across all industries to navigate their Industry 4.0 journey. And this index has gone global recently through a partnership that we have with the World Economic Forum, which sees the index being used now as an internationally recognized standard for Industry 4.0 transformation. Next slide, please. Having said all that, we recognize that Singapore is small and may not have enough land and labor to accommodate all kinds of manufacturing activities. So in order to make manufacturing possible for more, we're promoting what we call a twinning model, where companies can combine the business advantages, which I've mentioned, of Singapore and that of our neighbors, Johor in Malaysia and the Batam, Bintan, Karimun Islands of Indonesia. You can get to these locations from Singapore in less than an hour, and compared to Singapore, you can imagine the land prices, the manpower, the utility costs are much lower in these locations. But the proximity to Singapore allows them to still access the network free trade agreements that I had mentioned before, and to tap into the highly skilled talent pool in Singapore. So we have companies have their regional headquarters, innovation centers, or engineering centers in Singapore, and then set up their manufacturing facilities or assembly plants or warehouses in these other locations that I talked about. To support companies to do this, we have worked and we are still working with the governments and commercial partners in Malaysia and Indonesia to create offerings like business matching services, preferential access to industrial parks, and things like that. Next slide, please. I thought I would also take a little bit of time to highlight a few national level initiatives that are relevant to international businesses. I hope this can give you a sense on the broad direction that Singapore is headed as a country, and the sorts of opportunities that you can see coming up in the coming years. Next slide, please. The first one is in the area of sustainability, which is something that's on everyone's mind. In 2020, Singapore has updated our climate pledge to say that we will halve the emissions from its peak to 33 metric tons of CO2 equivalent by 2050, and to achieve net zero as soon as viable in the second half of the century. To do this, we rely on two things, obviously to transform our industry, economy, society by promoting energy efficiency and conservation, and also to work with emerging technologies like carbon capture, utilization, storage, and low carbon hydrogen, and to also pursue international collaboration with other countries in areas such as carbon storage and in energy imports, and to leverage market-based mechanisms that support environmental integrity. Next slide, please. We're increasing our green energy mix, which will provide companies with greater access to clean energy. For solar energy, for example, we deploy only about 400 megawatt peak today, and we plan to deploy at least 2 gigawatt peak by 2030. We have research institutes that have expertise in circular solutions, such as sustainable packaging, e-waste recycling, that could work with you. And Singapore is today also home to more than 70 organizations providing carbon services, which is the highest concentration of service providers in Southeast Asia. We have organizations also like Global Compact Network that guide on best practices and provide convening platforms for different players. Next slide, please. The next topic that I want to touch on is mobility. Singapore is a very small island of about 710 square kilometers, where 5.5 million of people live. So we're constantly thinking of ways on how to move people in a more efficient, inclusive, and sustainable way. Our Land Transport Authority has come up with a 2040 master plan to guide the transformation of our land transportation system. One big part of it is about making sure that every person in Singapore can get to the nearest neighborhood center in under 20 minutes, and for everyone to spend less than 45 minutes to make most peak hour journeys between any two places in the entire Singapore. We also want to make sure transportations become greener. For example, by 2024, we'll have 100% of our buses run on cleaner energy. And by 2025, if you're a big fan of EVs, all our public housing estates will be EV ready with the necessary charging facilities. Next slide, please. We're looking to solve all of our cities' transport challenges by using technologies to improve along the 4 areas of connectivity, autonomy, sharing, and electrification. And you might be asking, how is this relevant for you, right? So this is not just for Singapore, right? We're looking to position Singapore as a living lab for mobility solutions. So this means we welcome companies to develop, to test, to commercialize mobility solutions from Singapore. And this effort is supported by the whole of government coordination around building the standards and regulatory framework and the necessary infrastructure like AV trail circuits, 5G-enabled testing sites, and so on. Next, please. Switching gears a little bit to something quite different, but equally essential to us is agri-food and tech. Our vision for Singapore is to be a global hub for developing and commercializing agri-food tech solutions that can sustainably feed Singapore and other urban cities around the world like ours. To do this, we plan to lead in the region and the world in high-value manufacturing for novel food products, grow our capabilities in R&D and performance genetics, and anchor key parts of the global supply chain for high-tech food products. Next, please. We're seeing some early successes with international companies like Calera, which is setting up a large-scale indoor farm, Addicio, a French company which has an aquaculture R&D center in Singapore, Oatly, the Swedish company that makes all of our favorite oat milk, has partnered with a local beverage company to produce its oat milk products in Singapore, and Eat Just, an American company, which will build its largest plant protein production facility in Singapore. Next, please. And after sharing all this, you might be wondering, how exactly can we at the EDB support you? Next slide. Firstly, from our website, you can download free business guides and insights reports. There's also a calendar of events that could be interesting to you and your partners, a calculator tool that you can use to estimate the cost of setting up an office and living in Singapore. We're constantly updating these and creating new content. At the end of my presentation, I will flash a QR code, which you can follow to subscribe to our newsletter and to stay connected with us, to stay updated on all the new things that we put out and use all the new tools that we're creating. Next slide, please. Of course, then you are also welcome to speak with us directly, with me. You can connect me with LinkedIn, and then you can write to me. You can connect with me through our partners at Monx. We'd like to hear from you about what you're working on, why Asia is interesting to you, and why Singapore may be able to support you on your growth journey. You can ask us any questions that you have, or ask that we connect you with potential partners like research institutes, accelerators, incubators, and things like that. We may also be able to direct you to government incentive schemes that we have to support you in your building up your headquarter operations, R&D centers, manufacturing facilities in Singapore, to train the necessary people that you have and to build the capabilities that you need in Singapore in order for your business to excel. Next slide, please. I think that brings me to the final slide. And thank you very much for the time. Here's the QR code that I promised. I hope you take the time to take out your phones and just, connect with us. And then you can also find me on LinkedIn. I think I'm on the event page. Happy to connect with you and chat further with you. So thank you very much for having me. Thank you very much, Monx.
Thank you so much, Jacqueline, for that incredible presentation. And obviously, as Stefano mentioned earlier, Singapore is a fantastic place to be if you really want to take advantage of those of the ASEAN free trade area, but also if you really want to conquer Asia, which is the topic of this entire webinar. Our next speaker, I'm really happy to introduce Paula Kant, who is the Regional Director at Invest Hong Kong in Brussels. So Invest Hong Kong is the government agency responsible for FDI, supporting overseas and mainland businesses to set up and expand in Hong Kong. I can see you, Paula, if you're happy to unmute, and you can just take it away from here.
So while we're waiting for the presentation to come up, as you all have understood, well, firstly, welcome from wherever you're connecting. As we've heard from Stefano in the beginning, you basically need 3 dragons to conquer Asia. And we've heard a lot from Stefano. And now I would like to dive with you into the Hong Kong dragon. It's and a fast fact for the audience. Actually, what we always say in Invest Hong Kong about having also an office in Singapore and in mainland China, it's not either or. Ultimately, it's going to be and, right? Imagine for any Asian firm that wants to conquer the Western markets, they're also not going to be only in New York or only in Paris, right? They're going to be in both places. And that's also how we feel about Singapore, Hong Kong, mainland China. So Hong Kong, we've given it the name Your Route to Growth in Asia, right? Because ultimately it's about what your company's ambitions are. Okay, so we're talking about your company and how Invest Hong Kong can help you make it work in Hong Kong, which we often also call in colloquial language, China for beginners. Maybe Giacomo, if you can go to the next page.
Done.
Yeah. 3 quick topics that I would like to take you through. The first one, Invest Hong Kong, who we are, what we do, and how we can help you, most importantly. Then Hong Kong, a regional APAC hub and your gateway to the Greater Bay Area and the rest of China that Stefano already spoke about. And lastly, some recent success stories to kind of bring it a little bit more alive, right? Next slide, please, Giacomo, the one with the map. Yes, super. This map tells you how Invest Hong Kong is organized. So as you can see with all the red dots, we have offices around the world. We're a government department dedicated to attracting foreign direct investment, which is a fancy way of saying we help you set up a company in Hong Kong. We have 31 overseas offices, and if we zoom in on Europe, you can probably see there's an office in London, in Brussels, the Brussels office I had, in Berlin, in Paris, in Milan, in Oslo, Gothenburg, and then a little bit further afield, Moscow, Istanbul, and Jerusalem. So for every company, there is going to be an office relatively close by. Each of our offices helps companies from one country or a range of countries. For example, we here in Brussels help companies from Belgium, Luxembourg, the Netherlands, Ireland, Portugal, Spain, Malta, Cyprus, Greece, Bulgaria, Romania, and Croatia. And like that, each of our offices has its own countries, right? Then in our head office, we have 9 sector teams. And very importantly for you, our services are free, but also customized, and it's all fully confidential. So maybe next page, Giacomo. Here on this page, you can see those sector teams, and actually the sector teams are a little bit the secret of Invest Hong Kong. And I see it's so secret the page is white. But let me tell you what should be here for you to see is that there are 9 sector teams: business and professional services, creative industries, consumer products, financial services, fintech, innovation and technology, ICT, transport and industrial, tourism and hospitality. And there's a special Start Me Up team. So this is a matrix which makes sure you get the full service. You might start talking to me or one of the colleagues here in the team, and then as soon as you either travel to Hong Kong or now still with the travel restrictions, it might be in the form of a Zoom meeting, you start tapping into the knowledge of those sector teams. Like every economy in the world, Hong Kong suffered with COVID. GDP dropped 6.5% in 2020, but swiftly came back with 6.3% growth in last year. As you all know, there's still travel restrictions to Hong Kong, which means that tourism and retail are still frozen sectors, as we would like to say. At the same time, the financial services sector has shown to be very robust and has actually grown even in COVID times. And Hong Kong continues to be a major trade hub, number 6 in the worldwide ranking of goods and services exports. Key industries, probably not a surprise to you that financial services is the single largest business sector, closely followed by trading and logistics. And at an enviable place, there is also business and professional services. Next sheet, please, Giacomo. What are the strong points of Hong Kong? Well, a list that is too long to go in detail, but I would want to stress the one country, two systems. What does that mean? Hong Kong is a part of China, so one country, but still two systems. Hong Kong has its own currency, the Hong Kong dollar, its own passport, its own legal system, and it has its own what they call mini constitution, the basic law. And what does that give Hong Kong and China as the large country? It means that China is the only country in the world that has two currencies, right? The freely convertible Hong Kong dollar and the controlled currency, the renminbi. A very unique combination, which also immediately points to the strategic advantage that Hong Kong has and will continue to have, hopefully, in many years to come. Next slide, please, Giacomo. The tax system already touched upon by Stefano, so I won't speak about it for too long. But I think what is key is the philosophy in Hong Kong to make business as easy as it can possibly be to you as an entrepreneur, and make it all very affordable, right? A 16.5% corporate tax. Many other taxes simply don't exist in Hong Kong. So a very easy and attractive place to do business. And next slide, please, Giacomo. What we've been talking about leading business hub and all those things. So what does it really mean? The hard numbers. So as you can see here, Hong Kong has over 9,000 companies with a parent company overseas, right? Of those 9,000, close to 1,500 are regional headquarters. And what are the major sources of the parent companies? The 5 companies here listed: mainland China, Japan, the US, the UK, and Singapore. And just to highlight the mainland China and the Singapore, it tells you that for mainland companies, Hong Kong is a very important step outside to go. Let us call it international business 1.0. Which brings a big demand for support by business and professional services, and also that Singaporean companies love to set up in Hong Kong because it gives them that very coveted access to the Chinese market. Giacomo, could you show the next slide for a few words about the startup system in Hong Kong? Quite vibrant, close to 4,000 startups in the year 2021. And that's a growth of 68% versus 2017. And we see that employee numbers, obviously, in startups have grown together with this number of companies. And something I wanted to highlight, that it's a really international startup ecosystem, where 66%, yes, are Hong Kong companies. But that also immediately means then that 34% are startups from overseas. of which 7% Hong Kong returnees, but a very important percentage, that 28% here mentioned on the slide, from a wide range of foreign companies. And I want to highlight here also the very important percentage from France. Next slide, please, Giacomo. Another element I want to mention, that Hong Kong is unique, and also that it has this East meets West in the most literal sense of the word, meaning that in Hong Kong you have access to all the, let us say, Western digital ecosystems. You have Google, you have Yahoo, you have YouTube, there is eBay, everything, right? At the same time, all the Chinese important e-commerce sites are available, and important communication sites, like the way we deal with WhatsApp, I would say it's in China, it's WeChat, right? If you have no WeChat account, there's no life in China. And there's Tmall, there's Baidu. In Hong Kong, all of that is accessible, and let's not forget that for the vast Chinese market, still most of those Western digital ecosystems are not accessible. Challenges. The Greater Bay Area, also mentioned before, but let me dive into it a little bit deeper. What is this Greater Bay Area? It's Hong Kong, Macau, and 9 cities in the mainland of China, where each city has its own role. Why is it here? You can see the population of 86 million. But what is very important is the size of the population combined with the GDP. This is one of the richest regions of China, right? I think it's about 2.5% of the land surface, but 12.5% of GDP of China, right? So this is a place where if you come with your goods and services, there is quite an affluent population to buy these products from you. In the past years, there has been enormous development in connections, in fast trains, in bridges, in new airports, in everything. And we see that a lot of companies use, for example, Hong Kong for their sales and marketing office, and they might have a factory in Foshan. They might have a research team in Hong Kong and prototyping in Shenzhen. So there are all kinds of combinations doable and possible. And also, this is increasingly opening up there's a Stock Connect, Hong Kong, Shenzhen, Hong Kong, Shanghai. There's a Wealth Connect, which means that GBA citizens can buy funds directly. Small investors so far only can buy funds from Hong Kong banks, and the other way around. So this powerhouse of an economic area is there are big plans for this area, and there's the ambition, obviously, that's why it's called the Greater Bay Area, to compete with the San Francisco Bay Area and the Tokyo Bay Area. And let me ask you a quick question here. What do you think is the most innovative Bay Area in the world? I've asked this question in live seminars, and then many people say Silicon Valley. And the answer is no, it's the Tokyo Bay Area. But here you have an area, the Greater Bay Area, China's Greater Bay Area, with a lot of promise, a lot of growth, a lot of hungry and active consumers, as well as investors. What I already mentioned is the 86 increasingly wealthy consumers, and the companies on either side of the still border. We see Hong Kong has this dual function, right? It's a great gateway to China, the China for beginners, as well as a great internationalization 1.0 for Chinese SOEs, state-owned enterprises. And you might have heard of the recently signed RCEP, and that stands for the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership. That's China plus 14 other Asian economies. And that also is a huge push. It's the biggest free trade agreement in the world, and that will fuel a lot of business. We already see that it has been in place since the 1st January of this year. Trade volumes are increasing, and we see an increase in the north-south flow, right, from mainland Hong Kong to other Asian countries. Next slide, please. And to help you in this whole concept, because you might say, yeah, Greater Bay Area, so what does it mean to me? What can I do with that? Within Invest Hong Kong, there's a dedicated GBA team. And you see here the website of this team and a QR code. As was said by Jacqueline, the previous speaker, the presentations will be shared so you can follow that link and look at your leisure. Giacomo, next slide, please. Giacomo? No, sorry. We're going to the examples. Yes, great. 3 examples that I wanted to share with you to bring to life a little bit how we actually help. Vitai is a Portuguese fintech company. Might not ring a bell to many people because it's a B2B business, but actually has grown to a very sizable, excellent business. We met them when they were still a spin-off of a Portuguese university in 2016. Then they finally went to Hong Kong in 2018, where they now have 27 staff. The Vitai checks in nanoseconds whether a payment is legitimate, and so they have huge clients like everybody basically who is everybody in the banking and e-commerce uses their technology. We help them with setting up the Hong Kong Limited. Invest Hong Kong has a vast database of corporate service providers. We facilitated their contacts with the Hong Kong Monetary Authority because they needed a license for the type of work they do. We helped with the work visa applications, and we made sure they got speaking slot at various fintech events. And as you can see from this little cartoon here, Vitai is a unicorn with over $1 billion in valuation. Next slide, please. Yeah, that is a software company from Spain, software for water management. They won a contract with the Hong Kong water supply department. Why did they set up in Hong Kong? To support the Hong Kong water supplies department, to give proper fulfillment to the contract, but also to further grow and then to start offering their services, obviously, in the region. We can tell you that they have, since they started up, they have already found new customers. They also expanded their servicing to the water supply department, and they're generally very happy with their setup in Hong Kong. And that brings me to my last example, and this is Giacomo, next page. That is Belgian company Keppel Zegers. And as some of you might say, hey, Keppel, that sounds Singaporean. This is true. The Zegers company is a Belgian engineering firm, now part of Singaporean Keppel Group. They won a big contract for the integrated waste management facility, a waste-to-energy plant, water treatment, and a desalination plant. That's all happening now. We helped in companies in context with the Port Authority, with the work visa application, and again, we helped them to get more exposure in all kinds of events. So next page, I think, gives you my contact details. Happy to answer any questions you might have. Also about government support programs, major activities that are happening in Hong Kong. Upcoming the first week of November, I wanted to mention the Hong Kong FinTech Week. For all those fintechs out there, Please be in touch. And thank you very much for your attention.
Okay, great. We actually, sorry, let's not jump the gun. So next we have Daisy Yip from HKTDC. Giacomo, if you don't mind getting that video ready.
Hello everyone, it is a pleasure to be invited to speak with you today at this webinar, helping UK and EU companies with Asian expansion plans. I'm very delighted to present a case for why Hong Kong is the ideal location for business to consider in Asia, as well as to share with you how the Hong Kong Trade Development Council is here to support and facilitate your business growth ambitions. With Hong Kong's geographic importance and status as a world-class finance and business center, Hong Kong is better positioned than anywhere else in Asia to set up business to capture the myriad opportunities in the region. Earlier this month, Canada-based think tank the Fraser Institute continued to rank Hong Kong as the world's freest economy in the Economic Freedom of the World 2022 annual report. Furthermore, our free trade and investment policy, low and simple taxation, world-class infrastructures, and highly skilled talents pool, and the rule of law makes Hong Kong one of the top global locations to set up a business and also work together in Hong Kong with you too. So Hong Kong also has another important institutional advantages compared to other destinations in Asia. Its proximity to mainland China makes the city a principal gateway into the country. The Closer Economic Partnership Agreement, the CEPA, Free Trade Agreement, and the Act in 2004 allows businesses in Hong Kong unparalleled access to the world's second largest economy. Owing to CEPA, the mainland applies zero import tariffs to export from Hong Kong, meeting CEPA origins rules for goods and preferential market access for Hong Kong companies in 47 service sectors. Also, Hong Kong service suppliers enjoy preferential treatment in entering the mainland market in various service areas. So Hong Kong investors also enjoy preferential treatment in non-service sectors in the mainland too. Hong Kong is also part of the Guangdong, Hong Kong, Macau Greater Bay Area, the GBA, which I'm sure a lot of you have heard of for the last 2 years, the key region driving the economic growth of China. With a population of more than 86 million people and a GDP similar to Brazil, it offers a myriad of opportunities for overseas companies in various sectors. For international businesses, Hong Kong is the ideal gateway to enter this super hub and mainland China as a whole to maximize business opportunities. Another promising market is ASEAN. In 2020, ASEAN as a bloc was the second largest trading partner of Hong Kong. In 2022, 15 nations, including China and 10 ASEAN member states, entered into the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement, the RCEP, the largest free trade bloc in the world. The agreement is home to over 30% of the global economy, and in February this year, Hong Kong officially applied to join RCEP, and if everything goes smooth, Hong Kong will be part of the RCEP agreement by next year. Hong Kong already enjoys close trade and investment relationships with the economies of RCEP. In fact, we already have free trade agreement with 13 of the 15 founding nations, and further integration will only create more opportunities. Hong Kong is the bridge between mainland China and the ASEAN region, and its role as a key hub for trade between the two regions is only poised to grow. For international businesses, the most efficient way to tap the ASEAN and RCEP markets would be by establishing a base in Hong Kong. And at TDC, our global network of 50 offices, of which 13 are in Europe, are ready to help you to leverage Hong Kong's strategic advantages to support your business expansions. We do this through organizing world-class international conferences and trade fairs that attract hundreds of thousands of trade visitors and tens of thousands of exhibitors annually. You can also take advantage of our AI-driven business matching platform of over 130,000 suppliers and serving over 2 million registered international buyers all year round. As HKTDC London Office Director, my team is responsible for helping business across the UK, Nordics, and Irish markets expand and thrive in Asia through Hong Kong. If you would like to discuss more, please do get in touch after the event. And if you're elsewhere in Europe, I will be happy to pass on your details to our relevant office which look after your jurisdictions. I hope in these few minutes I have explained clearly the many advantages available to you through leveraging Hong Kong's many strategic benefits as the gateway to business opportunities in Asia, and why it makes sense to set up your office there. So thank you very much.
But our next speaker is Douglas Dong Tao, who is the Vice President at Invest Shanghai. And if Douglas doesn't mind switching on his camera, unmuting, and we'll just move swiftly on, as I know we're running a little bit late here.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for having me to join this webinar. Just now, two of my colleagues from Singapore, EDB, and also colleagues from Invest Hong Kong in Brussels, they already mentioned quite a lot about their advantages and their competitive advantage to set up companies in their cities. I just want to make, actually, they already done an excellent job to promote Asia for the people in Europe. For me, I work for Invest Shanghai, and I'm based here in Frankfurt, Germany. Before that, before March, I was in London office. Just like InvestHK and also EDB, we have offices overseas to assist foreign companies to set up their business operation in Shanghai. I only represent Shanghai, so I cannot mention China as a whole. China is too big and very diversified, not only from economic point of view and also from culture point of view. Shanghai, Singapore, and Hong Kong, we are three very dynamic cities in the Far East in Asia. All of us, we are booming economy, even in this very changing and dynamic world. Our economies, we are all growing, although we are experiencing some difficulties, but still we are keep growing. And because of CEPA, as Paula mentioned, and also a lot of regional economic cooperation among us, I'm so confident the economy in our region will continue to grow. So this brings a lot of opportunities, especially business in Europe, to find different channels to enter our market. We all have our own very specific advantages. China, of course, especially Shanghai, we have a big base, especially we have a big population and big market. Just want to let you know where Shanghai is. Shanghai, we really have a very strategic location in the east part of China and at the mouth of Yangtze River. Yangtze River is one of the very important transportation or logistic route by water in China. And also Shanghai just located in the middle of the coastline of China. So shipping to the outside world, doesn't matter, into China or out of China, we are in a very, very good location. So easily to connect with the rest of the world. And also this is the reason why. So in Qing Dynasty, the UK opened Shanghai as one of the most important ports for their trade. Hong Kong is in the leading position of Great Bay Area. Shanghai, actually, we are at the leading position in the Yangtze River Delta, another dynamic regions in China. We always say in China, we have two engines for economic development. One is in the south, that is the Great Bay Area, including Hong Kong, Shenzhen, Guangzhou, that area, of course, including Macau. Another engine that is a little bit to the north, that is the Shanghai area. We call it Yangtze River Delta. Shanghai in the middle. To the south is Zhejiang province, another very, very dynamic economic region. To the north, Jiangsu province, similar to Zhejiang, very strong economically. And last year, we still see a rapid GDP growth per capita, of course, compared with Singapore. To be very frank to you, compared with Singapore, Hong Kong, we still lag behind. We try to catch up with them. This will still take some time. Shanghai, we really experienced a very, very quick and dynamic change of landscape. Before Second World War, Shanghai was one of the most dynamic and economically very strong in the Far East. At that time, of course, Hong Kong was still a fishing village, but Shanghai was already a metropolitan in the Far East. Because of civil war, because of Japanese invasion, of course, Shanghai lagged behind, especially behind Singapore and Hong Kong. But after China adopted the open door policy in late 70s, Shanghai experienced dramatic change.
Thank you so much, Douglas. And our final speaker to close up this webinar is Francesco Vitali, who is a tax director at Deloitte in Hong Kong. So I'll pass the mic on to you, Francesco, if you don't mind switching on your mic and your camera.
So thank you so much for inviting me to speak in this seminar. And it was very, very interesting, this general overview to how to do and how arrive in Asia to do business. So as Stefano said before, Asia is the next step for everyone, because in the coming years, Asia is the huge market and the place to be. And the many things have been said from Stefano and from other people. And what I can say, what I can add is just that we provide today general indication, a general overview, but anyway, every time a company want to set up a business or want to come to invest in Asia, is absolutely important that each case by case has to be customized. So every time you have you want to invest in Asia, my suggestion is, of course, talk with your tax advisor, to your lawyer, and see how to set up the business in a better way. Stefano talked before about an important topic, that is the DTA, the double tax treaty. This is something that is very, very important, because in the moment in which you have to set up a business is also the right moment in which you should also plan to do your tax planning and your tax structuring, because today you do your setup, but tomorrow for sure you need to have your cash repatriation in the form of dividend or other kind of income like interest or royalties. And maybe tomorrow you also want to disinvest, so you have to understand in advance what is the best exit strategy in this sense. So this is why also is important at the moment in which you want to structure your investment to have in mind which are the country with the DTA between your country and the country you want to be in Asia. And in this sense, for example, could be more convenient to set up, for example, your hub in Singapore in certain case, or to set up your hub in Hong Kong for other cases.
But I'd first like to just thank everybody who's involved, all of our speakers from our partner companies and agencies, as well as our supporting organizations, including Cathay Pacific and the Italian Chamber of Commerce in Hong Kong and Macau. I hope that you found this insightful. I'm sure that you'll all have different questions which you want to ask, so feel free to connect with us on LinkedIn, drop us an email at hello@monx.team, connect with the other speakers, and please feel free to ask your questions. We'll be sure to answer really quickly. Sorry about the technical difficulty. As we know, it's all changed and we will have to do everything online. And we have multiple speakers from multiple locations connecting in with multiple presentations. So naturally, things have been a bit iffy, but luckily, I think we've managed to get through the most important parts of our webinar. Just thank you again to all of our attendees, to everybody who has participated and supported this webinar. and I'll hopefully see you again in another one soon. And don't forget, we have a webinar coming up all about how you can move to Thailand, relocate to Thailand, which is a completely different jurisdiction to what we've been talking about. That'll be coming up on the 3rd of October. We'll be sharing it on our LinkedIn and Facebook as always. So do sign up if that's something you're interested in. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.